Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Thursday, July 24th, 2025. Senate Democrats try again in committee and on the Senate floor to compel the release of the FBI files on the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, but they're blocked by Republicans. Two Senate Republicans call for a special counsel to investigate the Trump administration allegations that former President Barack Obama pushed a false narrative on Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Former White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain testifies in closed session before the House Oversight Committee in their investigation of former President Joe Biden's mental fitness in office. President Donald Trump visits Federal Reserve headquarters in Washington to see firsthand the multi-billion-dollar renovation of which he has been critical. He's joined by the Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins announces a major reorganization that will send more than half of the department's D.C. area employees to hubs around the country. Trump administration announces a $200 million settlement with Columbia University over accusations of not protecting Jewish students. U.S. withdraws its delegation from the latest Israel-Hamas ceasefire talks, saying Hamas is not serious about reaching a deal. And legendary pro wrestler Hulk Hogan has died. We'll hear his speech from the 2024 Republican National Convention. CNN writes that Senate Democrats have made another attempt to force their GOP counterparts to respond to the growing furor over the Trump administration's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case. Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee tried but failed to add language about Epstein to an unrelated opioid bill. The push to require the White House to release more information on Epstein, led by Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, was ultimately unsuccessful. The committee's Republicans agreed to a different measure that would neuter Booker's language. Booker later agreed to withdraw his amendment. That was from CNN. Here's Senator Booker offering that amendment, and then Senator John Cornyn, Republican of Texas, offering a second-degree amendment to replace Booker's amendment.
This amendment would allow S 1098 to take effect on the date when the Attorney General makes public all unclassified files, flight logs, correspondence, and evidence related to Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and their associates. The Department of Justice, we know clearly, has lied to the American people one way or another. Attorney General Bondi said that there were truckloads of evidence from the Epstein files and the Epstein list, leading people to believe that there was criminal activity that they had evidence of. I know Bovee, who we're talking about, was part of this. We found out yesterday that the president is mentioned several times in the Epstein files, and he was briefed on it back in May when he said he was not told that. Then in July, suddenly the DOJ and the FBI said there was nothing additional to disclose. So what's the lie? That there are truckloads of evidence and this DOJ is protecting those associates with this horrific crime? That Mr. Bovee, a Third Circuit nominee, is part of that cover-up? Or is the lie that there is nothing there at all? Let's just find out. This is simply asking for disclosure and transparency, and I'd like to offer that amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd call up a second-degree amendment to Senator Booker's amendment to 1098. This has to do with death penalty as aggravating factors for illegal aliens who commit a homicide in the United States while illegally in the country. I find it astonishing that our colleagues are more interested in the crimes of a dead man than they are in addressing the real problems that affect the public safety of American citizens on a daily basis, and virtually all of which flow from the open border policies of the Biden administration.
Senator John Cornyn, Republican from Texas, he went on to explain his amendment further, and then the debate returned to the Epstein files, the subject of Senator Cory Booker's original amendment that Senator Cornyn's second-degree amendment would completely replace.
Hidden behind real issues on immigration is really just trying to not vote on the important points that we brought up about transparency and accountability on the Jeffrey Epstein files. This is not an amendment to my amendment. This is an attempt to strike what I have a whole list of prominent Republicans, elected leaders, who want the same thing I want, which is just to have transparency on this matter.
Can we vote
I've
on
heard
my
some of the comments. If I can finish, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I have heard public statements by my Senate colleagues on both sides of the aisle I've heard comments from Republicans on the House side and Democrats on the House side that we want transparency and accountability on a matter of public safety. Senator Cornyn said that Jeffrey Epstein's dead yet, but his victims are not. There are women who have horrific stories of vile violence that was committed against them. We have Pam Bondi, our Attorney General, who said that there is evidence, truckloads of it, as to these crimes, potential co-conspirators, potential others involved. How can we not want to just know what happened? Why are we trying to simply turn away from the highest law enforcement officers in the land, from our FBI director to our Attorney General, who spoke towards crimes committed and others involved in those crimes? Why are we considering an amendment that is hiding behind real immigration issues, but real intent is to strike a simple request for transparency, for accountability, that Republican voices all across the spectrum have been demanding from this president and this Attorney General? So if Senator Cornyn is going to offer an amendment, I'm going to offer a third degree that simply strikes his first two lines. I'll vote on your immigration stuff that you so strongly stated that was the importance of this, but you hid the fact that you put here the real intention of your amendment. It has nothing to do with immigration. It says it right here in the first two lines. The real effort was just to not have accountability and transparency. What are you afraid of?
Mr. Chairman, may I respond?
Yeah, you may respond.
I trust the Senate-confirmed Attorney General of the United States to make the proper legal analysis to determine what of the Jeffrey Epstein files can be released. Right. He was confirmed by the United States Senate as Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States. I trust her to make the right legal determination. But I would ask my colleague from New Jersey, you claim you care about the victims. Do you care about Tammy Nobles? Do you care about Marie Vega, the angel moms who lost their loved ones, their children, to the acts of an illegal alien who never should have been here in the first place? Do you care about them?
Senator John Cornyn, Republican from Texas, in exchange with Senator Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, at today's Judiciary Committee meeting. It was during debate on a bill dealing with opioids, and Senator Booker offering an amendment on the Epstein files, Senator Cornyn offering a second-degree amendment that would strike Senator Booker's amendment and replace it with one dealing with immigration. The committee voted 12-10 to adopt Cornyn's second-degree amendment, party line, and then Senator Booker withdrew his now changed amendment. Senate Judiciary Committee also today voted 12-10 party line to approve Jeanine Pirro, former Fox News host, to be U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, sending that nomination to the full Senate. And you heard Senator Booker mention Emil Bove. The full Senate today voted to move that nomination along. Emil Bove is President Trump's former attorney and is nominated as a federal judge on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. The vote in the full Senate was 50-48. It was not fully party line. Republicans Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski voted no with the Democrats. Associated Press writing the House may be out of Washington, but Democrats in the Senate are picking up right where their House colleagues left off and calling for the release of the sex trafficking investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. This time it was Senator Ruben Gallego, an Arizona Democrat, who took to the Senate floor in an attempt to quickly pass legislation calling on the Department of Justice to release the Epstein files. His attempt to speed the resolution through the Senate was halted by Republican Senator Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma. And from NBC News, the White House does not support the request by Senators John Cornyn and Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina, for a special counsel to investigate what they call the Russia collusion hoax, according to a source familiar with the matter. The source told NBC News, while we appreciate the shared goal of transparency and accountability, the president is confident in the Department of Justice to handle the investigation. The Justice Department announced last night it was forming a strike force to assess the evidence publicized by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and investigate potential next legal steps which might stem from DNI Gabbard's disclosures. Gabbard's claims about former President Barack Obama and his administration manufacturing the intelligence community's investigation into Russia's interference in the 2016 election are baseless, according to the former president. That was from NBC News. Senator Graham, writing on X, "For the good of the country, Senator John Cornyn and I urge Attorney General Bondi to appoint a special counsel to investigate the extent to which former President Obama, his staff, and administration officials manipulated the U.S. national security apparatus for a political outcome." Election interference was a prime topic today at a Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee hearing, with various Trump administration nominees testifying, including Sean Planky for CISA Director, Cybersecurity and Information Security Administration. Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat from Connecticut, asked about the 2020 election.
Was the 2020 election rigged and stolen?
Senator, thank you for your question.
It's pretty much a yes or no question.
Thank you for your question, Senator. I have not reviewed any of the cybersecurity of the 2020 election.
Don't have an opinion on whether the 2020 election was rigged and stolen?
Senator, my opinion on the election as an American private citizen is probably not really relevant, but the Electoral College did confirm President Joe Biden and swore him into office.
Well, let me ask you, were there, quote, widespread election malfeasance and serious vulnerabilities with the voting machines, end quote, that changed the election outcome?
Yes, Senator, as you know, elections are state-run entities, and many different secretaries of state across the 50 states of the United States pursue different methods to secure their own elections.
Mr. Planky, my time is limited, so I'm just going to say to you, there ought to be no hesitation in your answer to these questions. The agency that you've been nominated to lead, CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, along with the entire national security and intelligence community, agreed that the election was secure. You're undermining the confidence of the nation in the election apparatus at a time when that credibility is as important as ever, when you're about to lead an agency that has responsibility for that security. State and elections officers across the country ran audits and examinations, and on a bipartisan basis, affirmed that President Trump lost the election. He won the next election. The answer to my questions is no. The 2020 election was not rigged and stolen. There were no widespread election malfeasance and serious vulnerabilities, even though President Trump said there were.
Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat from Connecticut, questioning CISA Director nominee Sean Planky at today's Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee hearing. Right after that questioning, the committee chair, Senator Rand Paul, Republican of Kentucky, brought the issue back to the new Trump administration allegations against the Obama White House after the 2016 election.
You know, when we talk about elections and whether or not they're rigged or not, I don't think one party or another is particularly immune to this. There's still people who believe that the Daley machine and the mafia conspired in Cook County in 1960. There's some evidence of it. You know, it's a long-time American tradition, you know, for both parties to question the other party in elections. I will say that in 2016, when Donald Trump won the first time, you know, Hillary Clinton, to this day, says that he was an illegitimate president. Jimmy Carter said he was illegitimate. From the very beginning, they tried to delegitimize Trump. So I would say it's no different. And in fact, if we're going to criticize Donald Trump for questioning the 2020 election, we should be equally critical of Hillary Clinton for questioning the 2016 election. The quotes are legion. I mean, dozens and dozens of quotes, dozens and dozens of interviews. Hillary Clinton to this day is unrepentant in this, but it's worse than that. That's just sort of an opinion. What they ended up doing is using the apparatus of government to try to delegitimize Trump. They used the apparatus of government to spread something that was a falsehood, that the Russians got the election for Donald Trump. He wasn't deserving. The people didn't vote for him. The Russians did this. But it turns out that all of the intelligence reports saying the Russians, of course they try to meddle. They meddle every time in all of our elections. But it was judged to be insignificant and not consequential until it wasn't. Until all of a sudden someone at the top of the intelligence community decided, oh, well, yeah, we think Donald Trump's illegitimate. We're going to spread this throughout government. And there basically was a conspiracy using government and using the power of the intel agencies. So for people who complain, Donald Trump complained about the 2020 election, my goodness. The Obama administration planted misinformation throughout government purposely. They planted it in lots of different places.
Senator Rand Paul, Republican from Kentucky, chair of the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee at today's hearing. Another witness, Christopher Fox, Intelligence Community Inspector General nominee, was asked by Senator Lissa Slotkin, Democrat from Michigan, about both the newly released material on the investigation of Russian interference in the 2016 election and the developments in the Jeffrey Epstein case.
I believe you're right now the senior advisor to Tulsi Gabbard. Is that correct?
My title is senior advisor, but I am performing in the capacity of acting chief of information management, Senator.
Got it. Okay. So I guess what I'm having trouble understanding is, you know, in the past couple of days, there's been reports out that your current boss has put forward going after Barack Obama and a bunch of reporting from, I think, 9 years ago now, on the exact same day that President Trump's name appeared in the Wall Street Journal as being in the Epstein files, the exact same day. It is hard to imagine that in the 4 years of the Trump administration previously, in the 6 months leading up to now, when there's been plenty of time for your boss, for you all in your front office to refer these issues to the Department of Justice, you picked the exact same day that the president knew he was going to be named as being in the files of a known pedophile, right, and a known sexual offender. Can you help me understand why? Because my 10-year-old nephew understands that that was a distraction, that we were talking about something that was 10 years old on the exact day that the president didn't want to be talking about his name being in those files. So can you answer for that?
Senator, I really appreciate the opportunity to address this. The declassification process is lengthy and it's significant, and we have an excellent team of officers who've been working on this for weeks.
You just said that that Secretary Hegseth could declassify under his authority and put out on public information a piece of secret, no foreign information. So that took seconds, and I've seen presidents do this. I'm a CIA officer. Presidents can declassify very quickly. Are you saying that the reason why Tulsi Gabbard made that decision to announce yesterday or whatever it was 2 days ago was because of a lengthy declassification process? And you're talking to a CIA officer who's watched those things happen. So please tell me how in the 4 years of the Trump administration previously, it didn't get done, but yesterday it got done.
Senator, I appreciate that question and your service as a clandestine officer. These documents are reviewed very carefully and redacted as needed to protect sensitive sources and methods, and that's not an overnight process.
Christopher Fox, Intelligence Community Inspector General nominee, questioned by Senator Lissa Slotkin, Democrat from Michigan, at today's Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee hearing. TheHill.com has an article about a witness who was to testify today but didn't. A Senate panel punted its consideration of Paul Ingrassia amid concerns about the controversial nominee to lead the Office of Special Counsel. Ingrassia was slated for a confirmation hearing Thursday before the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, but his name was quietly removed from the agenda. Ingrassia, a former podcast host, has made a series of controversial remarks praising right-wing figures and the events of January 6, 2021. That's the reporting from The Hill. The committee's ranking Democrat, Gary Peters of Michigan, spoke to this.
Mr. Chairman, I'm relieved to see that Paul Ingrassia, the nominee to run the Office of Special Counsel, has been pulled from today's hearing. The Office of Special Counsel is an independent, nonpartisan agency that investigates allegations of prohibited personnel practices involving federal employees, including whistleblower retaliation. Mr. Ingracia is unqualified for the position, both in terms of legal experience and given his long record of bigoted statements. And I urge the administration to formally withdraw his nomination.
Senator Gary Peters, Democrat of Michigan, ranking member on the committee at today's hearing. NBC News reporter Vaughn Hilliard posting on X, a White House official tells NBC that Ingracia's nomination is not being pulled. Ingracia will spend the next month speaking with senators, and we expect him to be swiftly confirmed. The president has full confidence in him and his ability to lead the Office of Special Counsel, a quote from that official. Another article from The Hill, former White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain answered questions in an interview with the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee in its investigation into former President Biden's mental acuity and use of an auto pen. His approach contrasts with some other former Biden aides who refused to answer questions, invoking their Fifth Amendment rights. Article from The Hill. The committee chair, James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, spoke to reporters as the closed session took a lunch break.
Interesting to you? There have been tidbits. We've asked specific questions. Obviously, evidence emerges on a daily basis that would suggest Joe Biden wasn't mentally fit to be president of the United States. Just in the last few hours, obviously, the Hunter Biden interview with the Ambien, which is a mind-alternating drug and a controlled substance. So we obviously have questions about that. We began asking questions about that. We've also asked questions. You know, it's unfortunate that Dr. O'Connor pled the Fifth because that would certainly be something that we would want to know with respect to the doctor. We've played some clips from the Hur interview. Obviously, Robert Hur was probably the first person that brought to the nation's attention that something was wrong here with the president. That's why he couldn't be prosecuted for mishandling classified documents. I mean, that's pretty damaging evidence, too. So I don't think it's any secret to the American people. There's evidence everywhere that would suggest that Joe Biden wasn't aware of what was going on around him. We're certainly trying to peel it back and determine who actually was making the decisions in the White House, because obviously we don't believe that President Biden was aware of what that auto pen was being used for.
Did he corroborate what Hunter Biden said about the Ambien?
We'll release the transcript at a later date. Certainly we want to talk to everyone. I felt like Ron Klain would talk. Neera Tanden has talked. We've had, we're about 50-50 with the Biden inner circle answering questions, and I certainly appreciate the ones that are coming in and answering questions. So far, Ron Klain has done that.
Congressman James Comer, a Republican from Kentucky, chair of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, speaking to reporters during a break in the closed-door questioning. Congressman Ro Khanna, Democrat from California, committee member, also gave an update.
Can you just tell us how it's going so far?
I found Mr. Klain to be very credible. He answered every single question. He was fully cooperative. There are times where he was asked about personal conversations he had with the president, and he was forthcoming, even if he could have said it was a private matter. So it was I really appreciate his candor in the comprehensive way he answered every question.
Do you know how much longer it's going to be going on in there?
The Republicans have had their questioning. Now we will ask some of ours, but I just want to emphasize that he was credible, humble, it was non-confrontational. He answered every question comprehensively, didn't avoid a single question.
What questions do you have for Mr. Klain?
Well, I'll ask, but I want people to understand the sacrifice it is to go into public service, the choices he could have made to make a lot more money, and whether you join a Republican or Democratic administration, it's a sacrifice to do that.
Congressman Ro Khanna, Democrat from California, outside the room where Ron Klain, former White House Chief of Staff to President Biden, was meeting with the House Oversight Committee. And the Washington Examiner reporting on this. He is the first witness to appear this week in the Autopen investigation into whether Biden was aware that government documents, including pardons, were marked with his automatic signature. 2 former Biden aides, Anthony Bernal and Annie Tomasini, and his physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, pleaded the fifth when they appeared for their depositions in recent weeks after being subpoenaed. 2 former aides, Neera Tanden and Ashley Williams, have participated in the transcribed interviews, but those transcripts have not been made public. That was from the Washington Examiner. From ABC News, U.S. District Judge James Boasberg said at a hearing Thursday that he will follow up on a former DOJ official's allegations that Trump administration officials suggested defying orders from courts in order to enforce the administration's immigration policies. The development came at the start of a hearing in which Boasberg was seeking to determine what due process rights were due to more than 250 Venezuelan nationals who were released to their home country from the CICOT mega prison in El Salvador last week after they were removed from the U.S. under the Alien Enemies Act. Judge Boasberg began the hearing by bringing up former Justice Department official Erez Rubeni's whistleblower complaint, saying the allegations, to the extent they prove accurate, have only strengthened the case for contempt against the administration. That was from ABC News. The case is JGG v. Trump, and representing the Venezuelan immigrants, ACLU attorney Lee Gillert, who spoke to reporters outside the courthouse in Washington.
I think the takeaway was twofold. One was that the government finally said that they will abide by an order to bring the individuals back. That's great, but I think that's the least of what the government could say, and that would be expected of the United States government. I think the real takeaway was that the United States government would not agree to just bring the individuals back without a court order. When Judge Boasberg found that they violated the Constitution by not providing due process, the government didn't really push back because they knew that they didn't give any due process. They gave zero due process. In fact, when these individuals were sent, the Supreme Court has now said even 24 hours is far too little. These individuals who are now in Venezuela, originally in El Salvador, got zero due process. Given that there was a constitutional violation, it's remarkable that the United States government will not simply bring the individuals back without a court order. I've been doing this work for more than 30 years. It's hard for me to imagine any prior administration, Democrat or Republican, not agreeing to simply bring the individuals back where there was a constitutional violation, and the individuals have suffered so much and are continuing to be in harm.
ACLU attorney Lee Gillert speaking with reporters outside the courthouse in Washington, D.C., again from the ABC News article regarding the more than 250 Venezuelan nationals who were released to Venezuela last week in a prisoner swap. Boasberg ordered status reports on whether all the CICOT deportees have been released from detention in Venezuela, as well as their willingness to return to the U.S. and any challenges they may want to bring on the deportation to El Salvador. The judge ordered both parties to submit a status report by August 7th and every 2 weeks thereafter. That was from ABC News. Also on immigration from the Washington Post, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has directed personnel to sharply increase the number of immigrants they shackle with GPS-enabled ankle monitors as the Trump administration widens surveillance of people it is targeting for deportation, according to an internal ICE document reviewed by the Washington Post. U.S. Border Czar Tom Homan got questions about this as he spoke to reporters in the White House driveway.
There are reports that ICE is looking to expand ankle monitors for 180,000 plus migrants in the ATD, Alternative to Detention program. What can you tell us about that?
I'm not on weeds on that, but I support it. I looked at the numbers the other day on the removal orders over the last year. 51% of those who got a removal order were in absentia, which means they didn't show up in court. So ankle monitors help us with that. So I'm not in the weeds on that, but if that's happening, I support it 100%.
Mr. Homan, are you going to keep sending Venezuelan members of the TDA to?
Following up on that, do you believe that every illegal immigrant should happen?
Well, every case is different. Then deportation laws make that judgment based on criminal history, immigration history. So it's a case-by-case basis. But I can tell you, back when I was ICE director, having that GPS capability increased those going to court a lot. So it does make a difference. And it's cheaper than detention, right, in some cases. But, it depends on the cases. But GPS in the past has been very helpful, getting people to court. And that's a big, like you said, 51% of remove orders are in absentia. If GPS helps them get them to court, I'm all behind it.
U.S. Border Czar Tom Homan with reporters in the White House driveway. The story from State Line News. Despite Trump administration rhetoric accusing Democrats of protecting violent criminals and drug-dealing immigrants, the administration's arrests have been catching a smaller share of criminals overall and a smaller share of people convicted of violent and drug crimes than the Biden administration did in the same time frame. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Democracy. It isn't just an idea. It's a process shaped by leaders elected to the highest offices and entrusted to a select few with guarding its basic principles. It's where debates unfold, decisions are made, and the nation's course is charted. Democracy in real time. This is your government at work. This is C-SPAN, giving you your democracy unfiltered.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you get your podcasts. Associated Press writes that President Donald Trump publicly scorned Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell on Thursday for the cost of an extensive building renovation as the two officials began a tour of the unfinished project. Trump said the project cost $3.1 billion, much higher than the Fed's $2.5 billion figure, while Powell, standing next to him, silently shook his head. That was from the Associated Press. There was also a conversation about the future of interest rates.
So we're taking a look, and it looks like it's about $3.1 billion. It went up a little bit, or a lot. So the 2.7 is now 3.1.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody at the Fed.
Yeah, it just came out.
Our notes had it about 3.1 as well.
3.1,
3.2. This came from us?
Yes. I don't know who does that.
You're including the Martin renovation. You just added
our entire capital plan.
Yeah, you just added in a third building is what that is. That's a third building.
Well, no, but it's a building that's being built.
No, it was built 5 years ago. We finished Martin 5 years ago.
It's part of the overall work.
But it's not new.
So we're going to take a look. We're going to see what's happening, and it's got a long way. Do you expect any more additional cost overruns?
Don't expect them. We're ready for them. But we have a little bit of a reserve that we may use. But no, we don't. We expect to be finished in 2027. We're well along, as you can see.
So, any questions?
Mr. President, does the issue give you any?
As a real estate developer, what would you do with a project manager who would be over budget?
Generally speaking, what would I do? I'd fire him.
Do you think this issue, Mr. President, gives you cause to do that?
Well, I'm here just really with the chairman. He's showing us around, showing us the work. And so I don't want to get that. I don't want to be personal. I just would like to see it get finished. And in many ways, it's too bad it started. But it did start. And it's been under construction for a long time. It's going to be a real long time because it looks like it's got a long way to go.
Yes, sir.
So,
Mr. President, are there things the chairman can say to you today that would make you back off some of the earlier criticism?
Well, I'd love him to lower interest rates. Other than that, what can I tell you? The country is doing really well. I just briefed the chairman on the deal we made with Japan. Japan is putting up $550 billion in order to lower their tariffs a little bit. That way they have a little bit lower tariff. And they also opened their country to free trade, which nobody thought was even a possibility. And we get a zero tariff in the free trade. We don't pay tariffs, and they're going to pay 15% on everything they send into our country. So it's great. But they put up, as you could call it, seed money. Let's call it seed money. You could call it anything you want, but it's a total of $550 billion. So nobody thought any of that was possible, and it's wonderful. And we're doing pretty well with the European Union, likewise. And we have some others. They're all really big, and our country's going to make a lot of money. We would be helped if interest rates would come down, but we're going to see how the board rules on that soon. I'd love to see them come down a lot. But we have a country that's thriving. We had a dead country 1 year ago. Today we have the hottest country anywhere in the world, and we'll get this one finished.
President Donald Trump standing beside the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell in the Federal Reserve headquarters under serious renovation. The next Fed meeting where a decision about interest rates will be decided July 29th and 30th. Wall Street today, the Dow down 316, NASDAQ up 4, S&P up 37. Federal News Network writes the Agriculture Department is planning to relocate more than half of its Washington, D.C. workforce to regional hubs around the country as part of the agency reorganization plans released Thursday. The USDA is also letting over 15,000 employees leave the agency later this year after they accepted deferred resignation and early retirement offers. The Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins put out a video aimed at department employees.
I want to be clear here that this is an announcement of a reorganization, not a large-scale workforce reduction. This reorganization takes into account the employee that made the decision to opt into the Deferred Resignation Program, or our DRP, earlier this year. This reorganization already recognizes that many USDA employees provide critical frontline services in locations all across our great country that cannot be disrupted. We have developed a phased plan to relocate much of the Washington, D.C. area workforce to 5 hub locations, while shedding a number of leases and buildings in the national capital region. We will also be reducing some regional office management layers and consolidating duplicate functions. The hub locations are as follows. Number 1, Raleigh, North Carolina. Number 2, Kansas City, Missouri. Number 3, Indianapolis, Indiana. Number 4, Fort Collins, Colorado. And finally, number 5, Salt Lake City, Utah. In the D.C. area, USDA will vacate the following office spaces: Braddock Place, Beltsville Agricultural Research Center, or BARC, George Washington Carver Center, the GWCC, and the South Building. USDA will retain offices in the Whitten and Yates buildings. As you know, 90% of our employees are already currently located outside of the D.C. area, and this move continues to best position USDA closer to our core constituents. We will carry out this reorganization through a transparent, common sense process that preserves USDA's critical health and public safety services that the American public relies on. We will do right by the great American people we serve, and with respect to you, the thousands of hardworking USDA employees who so nobly serve our country.
Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins in a video, again from the article at Federal News Network. USDA says the reorganization plan is meant to bring employees closer to the communities they serve and will reduce costs for a workforce that grew by thousands of employees under the Biden administration, quote, with no sustainable way to pay for them. The department, in a press release, said USDA workforce grew by 8% over the past 4 years and that employees' salaries increased by 14.5%. Reporting from Federal News Network. Columbia University, begins a New York Times article, will pay a $200 million fine to settle allegations from the Trump administration that it failed to do enough to stop the harassment of Jewish students. Part of a sweeping deal reached on Wednesday to restore the university's federal research funding, according to a statement from the university. In exchange for the return of hundreds of millions in research grants, Columbia will also pledge to follow laws banning the consideration of race in admissions and hiring, and follow through on other commitments to reduce anti-Semitism and unrest on campus that it agreed to in March. The deal, which settles more than half a dozen open civil rights investigations into the university, will be overseen by an independent monitor, agreed to by both sides, who will report to the government on its progress every 6 months. Columbia will also pay $21 million to settle investigations brought by the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. That was from the New York Times. The Education Secretary, Linda McMahon, was interviewed today about the settlement on News Nation.
It was a comprehensive agreement that we were able to reach with Columbia, and it is our hope that this is going to be a template for other universities around the country. And we're already seeing other universities that are taking these measures before investigation or before our coming in to talk to them. And I think that is an incredible win. But it was clearly evident in all of the scenes, some of which you just showed, that there was an issue that had to be addressed. At Columbia, their board recognized it. both of the presidents that I talked to at the time. It started with Katrina Armstrong months ago, and then with Claire Shipman, the current president at Columbia. They recognized there was an issue when they didn't have enough security on campus to handle the outbreaks, when there were mass protests, when Jewish students were afraid and felt unsafe to go across campus, when students were barricaded, in the library, and other students banging on, those glass walls, yelling, "Death to Israel, death to Jews." I mean, it was an awful thing that was going on our campuses. So this agreement that we have negotiated and worked out with Columbia is far-reaching. It is not only for today, but we hope that this is a long legacy of compliance. There's a monitor on campus. There is also a monitor at the Department of Justice to make sure that Columbia remains in compliance, and I have no doubt that it is their goal to do that. Their data collection will be available and open to us. There's going to be, hiring practices that are going to make sure that they're equal to all. Students will be evaluated that are coming in, that what is their reason for wanting to come to the United States to study if they're outside of the United States.
Education Secretary Linda McMahon today on News Nation. President Donald Trump posting on Truth Social Wednesday night about this settlement with Columbia University included this line: numerous other higher education institutions that have hurt so many and been so unfair and unjust and have wrongly spent federal money, much of them from our government, are upcoming. Columbia's acting president, Claire Shipman, putting out a statement. This agreement marks an important step forward after a period of sustained federal scrutiny and institutional uncertainty. The settlement was carefully crafted to protect the values that define us and allow our essential research partnership with the federal government to get back on track. Claire Shipman was interviewed today by CNN.
This is important for the university, but it is also a first. And the question is it a last? Like, are you worried with this of a precedent that this sets, that this proves that the Trump administration's strategy of weaponizing research funding works, and that this will lead them to do this more often, not less?
I can tell you, first of all, I am confident in the agreement we struck. We worked again on every word. So I am confident it does not cross our lines that were essential to us. Of course, I'm aware of the atmosphere in which we, are and were talking to the federal government and what other institutions are facing. It's a very complex moment for higher education. I respect every decision that every other institution is making and will make. I've had incredibly helpful, deep, thoughtful conversations with the leaders of other institutions. And I really think we are all facing many of the same issues. And I understand there may be different choices made, but this was the responsible path for Columbia. And I think it's a path that, again, is going to allow us to move on with the work we do so well.
And that is, and you said this was one of your red lines, but when it comes to independence and free expression and academic independence and free expression of your students, like, if people see this settlement and question if they can trust the school's academic independence now, question if students or anyone on campus that free expression will be allowed and not punished. What do you say to them? I mean, this is a core question.
Absolutely. Look, free expression is a bedrock principle for us at Columbia, and I would say at Columbia especially. We have a real history of celebrating free expression, and we always will, but not when it crosses the line into discrimination, harassment, calls for violence, or when it disrupts our ability to just conduct our work as an academic institution. So that is the challenge we've faced in recent years. And I think our systems are working better now. I think I would encourage everybody to read the agreement. It does not impinge upon that. But of course, there are always going to be lines on our campus as regards free expression if they're veering into that territory of harassment, discrimination, or disruption of our ability to function.
Columbia University acting President Claire Shipman today on CNN. Congressman Gerald Nadler, Democrat from New York, putting out a statement. I am deeply disappointed by reports of Columbia University's outrageous and embarrassing $200 million capitulation to the Trump administration's repugnant extortion campaign. Let's be clear, no investigation was ever conducted by the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, the single body charged under federal law with investigating anti-Semitism on campus. Part of the statement from Congressman Gerald Nadler. Story from NBC News. President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff said Thursday the U.S. is cutting short Gaza ceasefire talks and bringing home its negotiating team from Qatar for consultations after the latest response from Hamas, quote, shows a lack of desire to reach a ceasefire in Gaza. Witkoff went on, while the mediators have made a great effort, Hamas does not appear to be coordinated or acting in good faith. We will now consider alternative options to bring the hostages home and try to create a more stable environment for the people of Gaza. He said it was a shame that Hamas has acted in this selfish way, and the U.S. is resolute in seeking an end to the conflict in Gaza. Reporting from NBC News, this came up today at the State Department briefing in Washington with the deputy spokesperson, Tommy Pigott.
The special envoy's statement, does that suggest that the U.S. is pulling out of any sort of negotiating role in the Gaza ceasefire talks? What are these alternatives?
Well, look, ultimately the statement speaks for itself, but the question has never been our commitment to a ceasefire. The question has been Hamas's commitment to a ceasefire, and that has been made clear by the special envoy's statement. The fact that we have entered in good faith in trying to reach an end to this conflict. And as the special envoy said, we remain dedicated to trying to see an end to this conflict.
But will you work within the parties, Qatar, Egypt, for example, in the Doha format? Will you return to that, or are you pulling out entirely from this format?
Well, look, again, I refer you back to this statement. This is a very dynamic situation, and ultimately, again, to reinforce, the question here has never been our commitment to try to get a ceasefire. We've seen that engagement. The question here has always been Hamas's commitment to a ceasefire or willingness to get there.
And can you give us any examples of the alternative options that Witkoff references in his statement?
At this point, I have nothing to preview. Yes.
Thank you. Just following up on that, what about the response from Hamas specifically made the administration feel that they were not acting in good faith?
Well, look, these are sensitive diplomatic conversations. We'll see in the days ahead as we proceed here. Ultimately, the special envoy's statement speaks for itself, but I think the broader context here is also important. The fact that we have seen Hamas first break that ceasefire that existed on October 7th, then break another ceasefire, and then here, as the special envoy makes clear, not acting in a way in order to achieve a ceasefire again. So to reiterate, the question has never been our commitment to a ceasefire. It has been Hamas's. They have shown that again and again and again, and have just shown it once again.
State Department Deputy Spokesperson Tommy Pigott at a news conference at the State Department in Washington. U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee today voted 12-10 to report out former National Security Advisor and Congressman Mike Waltz's nomination to serve as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. It was almost party line. The ranking member on the committee, Jeanne Shaheen, Democrat from New Hampshire, voted yes with the Republicans. And finally, a story from ESPN. Hulk Hogan, the star who took professional wrestling to the national mainstream and became the biggest money-making draw in the history of the industry, died Thursday at the age of 71, Florida police and the WWE said. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, writing on X, "We all have fond memories of Hulk Hogan, from my childhood in the 80s to campaigning with him last year. I always saw him as a giant in stature and in life. May he rest in peace." Hulk Hogan spoke at last summer's Republican National Convention.
But what happened last week when they took a shot at my hero and they tried to kill the next president of the United States? Enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great again. You know something, Trumpites? I didn't come here as Hulk Hogan, but I just had to give you a little taste. You know, my name is Terry Bollea. And as an entertainer I love you too. And as an entertainer, I tried to stay out of politics. But after everything that's happened to our country over the past 4 years and everything that happened last weekend, I can no longer stay silent.
Hulk Hogan at the Republican National Convention last summer. He has died at the age of 71. Vice President J.D. Vance with this tweet: Hulk Hogan was a great American icon, one of the first people I ever truly admired as a kid. The last time I saw him, we promised we'd get beers together next time we saw each other. The next time will have to be on the other side, my friend. Rest in peace. Today, U.S. Border Czar Tom Homan, while speaking to reporters in the White House driveway, was asked about the death of Hulk Hogan, and he said he named his pet after him.
A friend of the president passed away today, Hulk Hogan, dead at 71. Do you have a favorite Hulk Hogan memory?
I loved Hulk Hogan. I had an Italian Mastiff dog, 200 pounds. His name, Hulk Homan.
Tom Homan in the White House driveway. And before we go, some news about a race for the open U.S. Senate seat in North Carolina in 2026. NBC News reporting that RNC Chair Michael Whatley soon will announce his candidacy for the Republican nomination with the support of President Donald Trump. And former RNC co-chair Lara Trump, related to President Trump, says she will not run. And on the Democratic side, Axios reporting that former North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper will be a candidate for U.S. Senate. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter Word for Word and get the stories making headlines in Washington emailed to you every day. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.